Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Divorced Dad Diaries. And I'm your host, Stéphane Jutras. And this week, I have another very special guest. Her name is Tracy Poizner, a stepmom of 14 years to 3 stepkids. And she's also the host of the Essential Stepmom podcast. So a fellow podcaster, a podcast which has been heard in 64 countries. So she's been helping stepmoms adapt to parenting and also helping divorced dads relearning to parent in this new family dynamic. She's also Canadian, based in Kitchener, Ontario. So another fellow Canadian on the show. So welcome, Tracy, and thank you for accepting to come on my show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
And I have to say, I really, and that's another thing I didn't mention before, but I was on your show a couple of weeks ago and really enjoyed that. And that's why I asked you and wanted to have you on the show to talk a bit about a few little topics I think that will be interesting for my listeners. As we discussed before, I think, you've been focusing a bit more on the stepmom and on that side. But I think when we start discussing, there's a lot of help and tips and things that are definitely more than welcome for dads on our side, divorced dad with kids. So thank you again. I think it will be a pretty interesting and also a lot of learning during this episode. So before we start, maybe I gave a little bit of background, but maybe if you can just tell us how you decided to kind of focus more on the parenting, coaching, stepmom, and that area of the divorce, if you want to, after divorce.
Yeah. So I've been a natural health practitioner for 20 years now. I've been a homeopathic practitioner. And my practice was focused for some years on helping children with behavior issues. So, of course, I was dealing with the whole family unit. When you're talking about behavior problems with kids, it's working with the whole family. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a long time passion of mine to work more with people who are in the earlier part of their life, because it seems to me that, when you help somebody early in their life, then they get to go through all the rest of their life in a new trajectory with support from the beginning. And so I didn't set out to do this kind of coaching work, but I realized at one point that after about 10 years of being together with my husband, that it felt like we were finally out the end of a very long period of high challenge in our family, with long distance parenting, with parental alienation, with issues of mental illness and medication and so many things. And then also a period of having kids here full time with us, because all 3 of my husband's kids came to live here with us sort of permanently. And I just felt that I had learned so much in that period of time that I just thought, I bet I have something that I could share with other people that's really useful, because it seems to me that it's really true. There are actually millions of stepfamilies in North America, and a very severe divorce rate, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. A very high divorce rate is 67% or something of second marriages with kids. So that's 2 out of 3 families are not making it. And that feels like really urgent to me. So I don't know, it felt like a good place for me to make a contribution.
Yeah, I think looking at, again, your website, listening to some of your podcasts too, and even the discussion we had before, it's once you're done or once you kind of go to the next step after the divorce, I think there's a lot of new challenges that I guess dads, moms, or as parents are not ready. You mentioned about parental alienation, and it's something that, once all the problems with the divorce are kind of put aside, now you have to start focusing on your family. And like in your case, like you said, all of a sudden you get a bunch of extra kids too with you. Yeah. So your family is bigger, and I guess there's different type of problems as well, and different issues that come up. So what do you think? What have you seen as a common thing, the most common problems that you've seen as far as parents and also step parents with the kids?
I think the most common problem that I see is that the expectations are not so clear on both sides. And
Okay.
I think sometimes when divorced parents come together, with kids on each side, sometimes it goes very smoothly because they understand that each one is going to be the parent of their own children and not try to parent the other children. And that goes very smoothly. But it doesn't work so well when there's an expectation, let's say that the mom is already at home with her own kids. And so how hard can it be to take care of one or two more kids? Like she can just do it and it should be okay, Or that there's a new girlfriend or wife who does not have kids of her own. And she is being driven instinctively by a kind of maternal instinct that women have when they get around kids. It just fires up by itself.
Yes.
And it makes it very, very easy to overstep the role, overstep what you should be doing. And sometimes, let's say that the dad could be very grateful to have help because it's not so easy. I'm sure you would agree it's not so easy to raise kids by yourself, right? So an extra pair of hands, especially if, the younger the kids are, the more you need extra hands, just another adult around. So it can go from being help that's appreciated to becoming a kind of expectation that you're just going to do it because you live there. And it's easy to slide into a feeling of, here we are again, a family. And there's just a new actress playing the role of mom and wife in my family. And everybody needs to understand that it's not ever, ever going to be like the old family. It just isn't. It's not supposed to be, but we don't have a good model for how it could look or why is it different or,
Yeah.
And really it's,
and I think that's, that's the only thing too, right? So I guess at least from my side, after, being divorced, I mean, what I know is what I've gone through. And I guess people try to reproduce what we've done before and without knowing how to adapt. And it's a different dynamic for sure.
It's a very different dynamic. The problem is that in a first marriage, a husband and wife get together and they have kids. So the husband and wife were a partnership before the kids come along. Their relationship is like in a timeline, it comes chronologically before the arrival of kids. And in a step family, in a blended family, the relationship of the dad and his kids comes before chronologically, comes before his relationship with this woman. And that's what I think people don't understand when they say, well, your marriage has to come first, because if the marriage isn't strong, then this new family is going to fall apart. But there's something energetically blocking that, which is the fact that, there's a reality here that the dad is connected to his children before his connection to his new wife. And so we need different tools. We need to work with different tools in this kind of family dynamic to make everything work smoothly. You can't just say that the marriage comes first, because at some point the kids will let you know that that's not okay with them. And in a second marriage, the kids have the power to drag it down and trash it. And it happens all the time. That's what the 2/3 of families that don't stay together, right? Something is happening there that's unexpected. And nobody expects that kids have the power to destroy this relationship.
Yeah, it's a good point too, because I know I discussed actually in another episode about this. And do you put your kids first, your relationship first? And there was some discussion about saying that at the end of the day, I mean, your kids, and like you say, you've been with your kids all their life, and they're pretty much the most important thing. But at the same time, do you, if your kids don't get along, if there's like conflict with the step parent or even with the parents, because I mean, it's kind of their kind of a relationship, that's where it becomes a bit difficult, right? Like you kind of stuck in the middle saying, do I pick the kids? Do I pick
Yeah.
this relationship?
So there's always a context, right? And I think it's so simplistic to say this comes first or that comes first.
Yeah.
There's always a context. And I think it's important to know is that we shouldn't be feeling that there's some kind of head-to-head competition of like who comes first, because we're operating on different levels. You know, your romantic relationship is not the same as the survival needs of your children, basically.
Yeah, sure.
And I always like to refer to, it's something from the world of psychology called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a kind of a pyramid shape, and it's a really good description of human needs and how they go in a hierarchy, kind of ladder. And at the bottom, of course, we have like needs like air and food and water.
Yeah.
That's kind of understood. But from the more emotional or psychological based needs, the foundation one is security and safety. And, you know, this is where we feel like our survival is depending on these needs being met. And for children, all of their survival and safety needs are wrapped up with their parents. Kids are not, you know, taking care of their own survival in the world until maybe age, let's say, 15, 16, you could theoretically be taking care of yourself. But before that, it's all about mom and dad. And at the moment that mom and dad are not a unit anymore, that is a unit which is, you know, devoted to the best interests of the kids, they're now separated, and they have, by and large, very different ideas about what's in the best interest of the kids.
Yeah. So
their safety is always feeling 50% not okay, because one parent is always not part of this unit. And so for let's say the stepmom, who's the wife or the girlfriend, her needs are on the level of belongingness and love. And that's higher up in this pyramid, but the more fundamental needs are the ones that are going to overwhelm the field, you know, the dynamic. And if those more fundamental needs aren't being met, those people are going to thrash around like people who are drowning, or, you know, and they don't say I'm drowning. They act out and they behave badly, and they, you know, do all kinds of things to get attention, because any kind of attention is nourishing them in some way that they need very badly.
Yeah.
So you're not competing on the same level, and it should not be difficult to meet everybody's needs in that way. And I also like to remind people that as an adult, you know, as a grown-up, you have all of your grown-up tools and resources at your disposal to get your needs met. And kids have zero tools, really. They're just at the mercy of their situation.
That's true.
So I think it serves us in the long term. You know, we're going to have all the rest of your life to spend with these people. And if it's a few difficult years in the beginning, to make sure that their tank of needs is getting filled up so that they can move forward with a secure feeling, it's definitely worth the investment. So your long range goal, of course, is for your relationship to be the most important thing, because the kids will grow up and move out, and then you have all the rest of your years together. But you can't behave in a way that the relationship is more important than the needs of the kids while they are still in this phase of needing to have that security filled up.
No, I think it makes sense. I can see it here too, and often, I would say always, but often brings conflict though, because again, you're kind of stuck in between, and like you talk about tools, and as adults, you know, there's different way to manage around that, I guess, but it's definitely not easy. And we talked about, you know, being the parent being the parent with the new relationship as well, but also sometimes on top of everything, like trying to deal with the new relationship, there's also trying to deal with sometimes the other parent as well,
You
and
bet.
with the kids. So so
Yeah.
it comes from everywhere.
Yeah. And
So
I really feel for the dads, I really do, because I think a lot of the time they are stuck in between, not just in between the ex-wife and the new wife or girlfriend, which can be terrible all by itself. But even between the new girlfriend and the kids is another place that they feel stuck in between. And it very often happens that the stepmom over time realizes that she has maybe a different style of parenting than her partner. And she doesn't feel satisfied with how he's parenting his kids. And then that's creating a lot of conflict too.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you've seen kind of, I guess you've worked kind of on both sides, I guess, with mom and dad and stepmom and stepdad. What would be the major difference that you've seen working with kind of both sides? And let's say as a dad, again, I'm talking as a dad because I'm the dad here. How different is it, and like what they encounter and how they live through that, and type of help that they would need, or what have you seen out there?
Well, it's kind of interesting because you said moms and dads and stepmoms and stepdads. So I only work with stepmoms and their partner, who is the dad. I don't have any experience with the other kind of dynamic, which is the biological mother and a stepdad. It's a completely different kind of family.
Okay.
Completely different. I can't even put it into words. It's a very, very different dynamic, partly because of the archetypes that are involved. Society has really put everyone into a kind of a box or whatever you want to call it. We have these archetypes. So the divorced mom, the single mom, is a kind of a saintly person, a kind of a heroine of her story. And she's working really hard to raise these kids on her own. And, she can hardly do anything wrong. And the biological dad the archetype is the deadbeat dad, the one who's not paying child support. He ran off probably with another woman. He's not helping her to raise the kids. Like, you've probably felt that, right? Like that it's not expected that you're the one who's raising your kids the way you are actually doing. It's not expected. And then you have the stepmom, who is thought of as being probably the woman who broke up the relationship of mom and dad, even if she met him years later. It's very hard to shake the idea that you are not responsible for the end of that marriage in some way.
Yeah, that's true.
And also probably you are secretly trying to send the kids away to boarding school to get rid of them, And then the stepdad is a kind of a hero who comes in to help the saintly single mom to raise, he's stepping up to raise somebody else's kids. Isn't he a great guy?
It's a lot of pressure, though.
It is a lot of pressure, but it's, we have those archetypes that are real. And it doesn't matter what the reality is. There are stepdads who are horrible guys who are, hitting the kids or whatever it might be. But in general, a stepdad is thought of as a helpful person in the situation. And a stepmom is not thought about in the same way.
It's funny
that she's somehow helping this dad to do his thing. And there's another weird thing in our culture now that this idea of 50-50 custody, of sharing custody is something really very new in the history of humanity. It never happened like that before now. About 40 years ago, we started to have the first family court judgments that were giving dads half of the custody. And it's sort of normal now. Like if you don't ask for it, then you're kind of a bad guy.
That's true.
Like if you don't want it, then it must mean that you're not really interested in raising your kids. But if you get it, then how are you supposed to do that with your working schedule? Like, how do you figure it out? It's not so easy to have.
There's a double standard there too. It's like you said, right? If you don't ask for it, exactly, you're the deadbeat. You don't want to take care of your kids. And in my case, I mean, if you ask for it, or if you have full custody of your kids, it's the opposite. Is like, but why are they spending time with their mom? And why, the opposite, there wouldn't be any question if the mom would get 100% of custody. But when it gets on the dad side, all those questions pop out. And
that's it. If dad has 100% of custody, then it probably means that he was an asshole and he, got a really good lawyer and made it impossible for the mom to have them. Like, you can't win.
That's very true. That's very true.
You kind of can't win. So we're dealing with those. Yeah. So I guess my work is all in the household where the deadbeat dad and the stepmom who broke up the family are living together.
Okay. So that's more okay. And so I guess it's my case now.
Yeah.
I'm the I'm the deadbeat dad, I guess, on that front.
Yeah.
But I know you start, and that's a feeling I got too. We talked about it a bit before, obviously. As a divorced dad and having your kids with you, is you kind of really start from way behind. And, you have to prove yourself every day. And there's a lot of, we talk about parental alienation. There's a lot of that too, from obviously the mom, and even other people, looking at how you raise your children and what you do with them. And you have to start from far behind to kind of come at least to par with mom. I don't even know if we ever get to that point, but it's a struggle for sure.
Well, you have much less latitude for making mistakes, I think. And
that's true. Mm-hmm.
What I try to impress on the moms who I work with and the ones who listen to me is that as a dad, you have a right to make mistakes raising your kids and to figure it out and try again something different the next time. It must be very hard to have someone breathing down your neck while you're trying to figure it out. And I know that my husband doesn't appreciate it at all when I'm breathing. He lets me know, butt out, it's very important.
I guess, like you said, it's a bit normal because how it was before, and it's kind of been changing on that front. But definitely, I feel that breathing down my neck. I mean, the more you go, and the more that people around you, and even the ex-partner, realizes that the kids are still doing well, and they're still alive, and everything's good.
It really
But
is.
there's always that, and you're right. That I have to say too, on my side, I always kind of feel that. Still walking on eggshells, and just be careful what I decide to do about different topics and different things, and that definitely is an issue on that front.
I have a question for you. I wonder if you can relate to the concept of, what they call guilty dad or guilty parenting, that somehow the circumstances of the divorce and living in two homes, that it makes you feel less inclined to discipline your kids the way you would otherwise, to make limits or consequences or something. Do you relate to that, or that's not a feature that you have to worry about so much?
No, I do. Guilt's been, I think, there even before marriage and even during marriage, but definitely with the divorce. There's part of guilt there, and obviously you realize that the kids have been through a lot, and there's always a guilt, even if you're the one that left, or even if the other person left, still kind of that guilt of not having done everything, maybe, or to make it work, or maybe you always kind of second guess yourself. So definitely with your kids, after that, on my side, you're always a bit more kind of easygoing because of that. So a bit of the guilt, but also I think what we said before too, about being felt like someone's always watching you, right?
Yeah.
So you'd always try to kind of be, I wouldn't say careful, but kind of weigh what you do, and you have to be not too hard on the kid, but not too easy on the kid. So it's a tough line, I find, on my side to kind of have. It's every day, still to this day. There's different times I have to think twice, and it's like, okay, how do I manage this situation? And
because now you have to be both the good cop and the bad cop.
That's it. That's it, exactly. And that's what I was about to say is when you were married, there's always a good cop and bad cop
Yeah.
in there, like you said. And so it's easy, but when you're the single parents, exactly, you have to kind of think about a bit of the balance of the two and not to go too strong on one side or the other side.
Yeah. The other piece of that is that in a first marriage, where both the parents are the biological parents of these kids, it usually happens that one person or the other is more suited by their personality to be the good cop or the bad cop.
Yeah.
And that it comes easy to you, to be the one who says no, or to say, no telephone for 3 days, or you're grounded or whatever. And that if it's not in your nature to be like that, then you have to develop something in your personality to allow you to take that role, because it doesn't come naturally to you. So I think that's where a lot of the families that I work with get into trouble, because the dad is still in the phase of trying to figure it out. And his partner, the stepmom, is just observing that it's not happening, that he's not following through. You get as far as saying, if you don't do this, you're not going to get to have that. And then when the time comes, he can't follow through. Yeah. So it takes time to develop that. And it can be very hard to watch from the perspective of the stepmom, who feels like, oh my gosh, his kids are just walking all over him, like he's not holding any limits. So that's a lot of source of conflict.
That's true. And on top of that, like I mentioned before too, there's on that side, but there's also the other side too, on the mom side as well. That's kind of watching, and same thing, right?
Yeah.
Whatever decision you kind of make, they also have something to say on that front.
Of course. And it's not just, let's say, criticizing your decisions, but any kind of boundaries or limits that you're putting on the kids. Yeah. It's really easy for the mom to convince the kids that, these limits are unreasonable. And I've spoken to adult stepmoms who are describing what they went through when in their own parents got divorced. And one woman said, it was really only when I became a mother that I realized that my mom had been telling me that all this stuff was like outrageous control grabbing, on the part of my dad. And really, it was just pretty normal stuff. Like, you should go to bed by 11 o'clock and you have to do all your homework. And, it was just normal parenting. But the mom was convincing her that this was, her dad being a control freak, and it was way over the top. And so it just makes it so hard to do normal parenting when somebody at the other side can say, you don't have to listen to that, because that's just crazy,
Yeah, exactly. Definitely, that's something that makes it harder. And also, that's where I guess also you start at some point, I find, kind of start doubting yourself too. And, you see that coming from both sides as well. And it's like, oh, maybe this way is not the right way to do it. So you kind of switch a little bit on the other side. And But at least I know on my side, you kind of realize at the end that we're all adults. We all are very smart people. And I think can make our own decision is to kind of, it's better to kind of go the way you think, I think, and learn from it than basically kind of being, I don't know, stuck in between, if you want, and trying to do like, let's say the mom says or someone else says. So,
yeah, I agree.
It's not an easy. It's not an easy thing. I mean, we talk about the parental alienation too, as well, and that's the other thing that that comes into play. I find in there too, right?
Yeah,
the way you do things, but also things that are said on the other side often that you have to deal with too, and you have the kids that get kind of stuck in between, and it makes it even harder to basically come up with rules and to follow those rules when you get on the other side and a lot of things are said and even the kids start doubting and they kind of push back as well, because let's say the mom starts pushing back as well. So that's also another challenge.
It's really big. I have read that as much as 80% of divorced families are experiencing some degree of parental alienation, whether it's mild or completely extreme where there's no contact at all. But it's a big feature of the vast majority of divorced parents' lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really awful, of course. And often the very act of trying to raise children together is a huge feature of why people get divorced, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's a big part of it. So you can't expect that it goes better afterwards than it was before. But the alienation part is really hard. And that's where I feel like my main contribution is lying in working in that area. Specifically in the area of the parent-child relationships, when they're being challenged, when they're being interfered with by behaviors, manipulative behaviors on the other side.
I've seen a lot of stories about specifically for that, obviously, since that's a bit more my focus, but there's a lot of struggle on that front when you get the parental alienation and trying to deal with that. And sometimes you don't know how, right? And I know on my side, my kids are a bit older, so I guess the strategy, if you want, or we'll say it's a strategy, but I mean, they're old, and in my mind, I always thought that they will make up their mind and they'll see really how it is, right? At the end of the day, I can say whatever I want. And they do. And that's where you realize I always say, like, they're smarter than you think. Being even older, it's even maybe a bit easier, but they realize what's happening quite quickly, and they realize things that are said and, what's happening there, and they make up their own mind. And sometimes it backfires too. And that's the other thing too, that you kind of realize.
Yeah. No, it does.
You have to be careful what you say.
That's my experience of interviewing many, many dozens of women. I reached out to the women in my community. I have about 1,000 women in my Facebook group. So I've reached out to interview women who had this experience as children themselves. So they are now, grown-up people who lived through the divorce of their parents, and they were alienated by one parent against the other parent. And I've interviewed lots and lots of these women, and they all say the same thing, that they eventually figure it out. And now they have a much better relationship with the parent that they, didn't see, the targeted parent.
Yeah.
And the one who did that alienation, they have a very difficult relationship with now. So yes, it can take a very long time to work out, but they do see it in the end. But it's very dramatically hard on the parent to live through it. And I agree with you that dads mostly, we'll talk about dads in this context because they're the ones who I'm working with. It does happen to moms. Of course it does. I know moms who have been alienated from their kids, but
of course,
the majority of the time it's happening by the mom. And I think it feels like you really have to rescue your children from a very bad situation. So it feels desperate, and there are so few tools, and the family court system is not at all set up to deal with this kind of emotional drama. The court system is about business arrangement, business type of things, and it doesn't handle this kind of problem effectively at all. So my contribution, I guess I don't have another way to say it, is to look at things outside of the court system that can help to shift the balance and to build into the relationship of the dad and kids, to build in a kind of immunity to this kind of behavior, this interruption, the disruption of the relationship, so that it can't happen. And it can help to also to put back together a good parent-child relationship after the, sometimes, let's say the parents go to court, and finally, after several years of no contact, the court decides that the kids have to visit the dad. And so now, good, you won your court case, but now you have kids in your house who don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Or they're angry at you. They don't want to talk to you. Where do you go now? The court can't help you anymore. So there are a lot of tools and, good strategy for working on the unconscious level to restore this relationship that's been broken. Because it's not a conscious thing. It's not a rational problem. The damage that's done is not done rationally. So you can't fix it with rational explanations and words.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good to know. And I think we talked about it before, and maybe if there's any dads listening and that need help on that front, like I said, when it first happened to me, definitely I started looking around a bit and see if there was any tools out there. And it's difficult. Like you said, you can go to court and it's treated, as you mentioned, as a business, but really how to deal with that and how to be sure that, I wouldn't say that your rights are respected, but at least to be sure that, you do everything you can to do the right thing with your kids and to prove to everyone that they're safe and everything is going well and there's no need for that. So I think it's a bit hard on the dad to find tools on that front. But I know we talked about it before about some of the tools and with the dads that you have on your side. So if anyone is really interested in that and needs some help, I think you have definitely something interesting, and I would encourage them to reach out to you as well.
Yeah, for sure. You'll have a link for my download, a free guide, I guess you would call it, that I call my program. The program that I'm developing is called Restorative Parenting. And it's really specifically for this situation, for divorced dads who are dealing with kids who have been alienated, that you maybe haven't seen for a long time, or that you see them continuously, but they're being brainwashed.
Still,
it's kind of systematically, and you feel that your bond is being eroded, or the relationship is being ruined by the actions of the mom on the other side. So restorative parenting is really a strategy and a set of tools for putting that back together in a more permanent, solid way. And you'll have a link for I have kind of a quick start guide that's just a little taste of that program, but it's enough to get you going in the right direction for sure.
No, that's great. And I really appreciate that. For the podcast, for the episode, I have a page. So there'll be a page for this interview, and on there, some information about you, your work, and the documents there to the links and everything else. So anything that can be helpful, I'll put that on there for sure. So
good.
If anybody needs any help or have any questions or anything, definitely I would invite the people to reach out to you on that front.
Yeah, anyone can find me at info@essentialstepmom.com. And I know it could feel weird to be writing to essentialstepmom.com, but I might have to change the name of my website or something to make it a little bit more dad friendly. But like I said, my work is all on the side of the divorced dads and their partners and in that household.
Yeah.
My audience members are the partners of your audience members.
That's good. It's a good compliment on that one. So definitely. Well, again, I think it was really, really interesting and really informative. Thank you again for joining me and on this episode. I'm sure the dads here learned a lot of things, and I'm sure you'll get some feedback from them. So really appreciate you spending some time with us talking about this.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. And you mentioned your email address, info@essentialstepmom.com. Is there anywhere else that people could reach you? Or I think you have a Facebook group as well. I'll put all the details anyways.
Yeah, sure.
But, you'll also have an Instagram as well. And people can also reach out to me if there's anything at TheDivorcedDadDiaries@gmail.com. And any question or anything, I'll be more than happy to forward it to you as well. So thank you again for your time.
My pleasure.
And I'm sure we'll talk soon again. Yeah. There's so many other topics that we can talk about. Yeah. So I'm sure we'll do that again.
Okay.
And that's all for this week. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or even suggestions, please don't hesitate to send me an email at TheDivorcedDadDiaries@gmail.com. And as always, I can be reached on Facebook. I have a Facebook page that you can join and post on there if you want. The Divorced Dad Diaries. Also have a Twitter account if you prefer. You can reach out to me there, or Instagram as well. So please don't hesitate. And also, if you want to be the first ones to be notified for the next episode, you can go on your favorite podcast platform on iTunes, Spotify, pretty much everywhere, and you can subscribe to my podcast. So that way, if you subscribe, you'll get a notification for all the next episodes. Also, if you don't mind spending maybe a minute or two, you can also leave a rating and a comment as well, a review on iTunes or Spotify, or again, whichever platform you use. That would be really, really appreciated. So I hope you all have a nice week, and also everybody stay safe. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.